Welcome to Episode 7 of the Hello Newman's podcast, sports podcast. My name is John Newman.
I'm not John.
This is Jordan. Not a super crazy week in sports, but some big news breaking. Let's start with this is really fresh today, Tuesday. The NFL announced they're going to a 17-game season. And a lot of times when the NFL passes these rules, Jordan, it's usually like 2 years from now. And this is actually going into immediate effect. Some players not big on it and have voiced their displeasure on social media. There's going to be one less preseason game. I could do without that. I like that aspect of it. The thing I got to read more into this because it just kind of broke, but with 17 games, you're obviously going to have an odd home or away game. So, the schedule is going to be a little off balance. I think each team's going to play just kind of a random team. So if you're battling for a playoff spot to the last week and your opponent plays like a really crappy team and you have a really good team on your schedule, there's going to be probably some complaints with this. I don't know if that's where the players' complaints are coming from or the fact that they have to play another game. But they're not really playing another game technically when you think about it's still, with the preseason, it was still 20 games before. It's still 20. It's just 3 preseason. But as we both know from being football fans, most starters don't play in a preseason game. So it is an extra game of wear and tear.
I think that's your big complaint is you're probably going to have a couple guys, if we are playing that extra game, where's the compensation for playing that extra game, which I think if it comes to that, they'd figure it out percentage-wise if they had to. But I like the losing the preseason game, but I almost would knock off 2. I think you really need 2 games. I think even by the 3rd game, I think everyone there kind of knows. And I think coaches usually going into camp and now having a real camp coming up, they know usually going into those, 3rd and 4th games already kind of who's there and who's not. So I think just kind of putting those guys up for a chance at injury by giving that 17th game, they're already going to play it anyways, at least have it mean something somewhat. So I do like what the NFL did, which is it's usually rare to kind of agree with kind of all bases on it. But I think they did the right thing there. And I like you said, getting it through, not doing this, big drawn out process, just implementing it and just getting it out of the way, which is good.
Well, I like your idea. Go to 2 preseason games. Go to 18 regular season games, then you have 9 home games.
Well, I'm not even saying add the extra regular season.
Just
That way, you kind of lose. You figure out the money difference instead. You just take that extra game off instead of giving them a little bit extra money. It's just, hey, you don't got to suit up and play football for a game.
Yeah. Here's the other thing that people might not even think about: record books, right? You're going to have now a 17-game season. It's an extra game for a running back to break a rushing record, a touchdown record.
Yeah, but we've seen it. They've gone from 14 to 16 as well. So I think, you know what I mean? It'll just be one of those things when you do talk about, like a guy like O.J. Simpson with a 2 in 14. Yeah.
He did it in 16. Yeah. I don't know. I sort of wish there was, you know what I mean? I hate when we talk about different parameters with records, and then because then it becomes 3 records, right? You have your 14-game record holder, you got your 16-game record holder, and now you're gonna have your 17-game record holders, and sometimes that gets a little bit over a little bit much. I get it. It's the times are changing and different things like that. I understand, but we'll see. I don't know. As Steeler fans, we might need that extra game.
Yeah, we might not need it too.
So I don't know. I just wonder about the home and away field advantage. I just worry about a team has to play a tough team and another team gets an easy matchup. And that's the difference between one team getting in. The way the schedule is now or prior, is you play everyone obviously in your division twice, and then you play all the same common opponents. And so when you're battling out for the division, you can always say, well, we played all the same teams, the same amount, and we did better. We won the division. Now you got that weird oddball game that one team might hold and say to the league, listen, they got to play, name a bad team, the Detroit Lions, right? And we had to go and play, the Arizona Cardinals, and that's not the same. And we lost, and they won, and they snuck in. And so that's what's going to happen. I think you're going to hear players, you're going to hear I think you're even going to hear coaches use that and say, man, well, yeah.
I think in the home and away thing, I think they'd probably just alternate by year. You know what I mean? You played home the extra game, next year you're away, which I understand. But like you said, with the opponent, just you never really know, who that team's going to be, what part of the year. So it does kind of put in a wrinkle in there that you wouldn't expect. And it's kind of an interesting thing. I think you see the MLB does a lot more interleague and crossing. So I think it would be interesting. It would be cool if they figured out kind of not like a tournament, but something, make it a little bit more fun. I don't know.
I think they're going to be complaints about competitive balance and their schedule. That one game was tougher, so it threw off.
I don't know. I think if it was loud enough, it would have been. I don't think it would have got to the point where, you know what I mean, to get it passed already. I think you're going to have probably a few gripes in the first 2-3 years from, you know what I mean, a team that does kind of get shafted there. But I think overall, I think it'll be one of those things 4 or 5 years down the line. It'll be second nature.
They can always take it away. Let's say they try it for a couple years. There's a lot of opposition to it. They can vote it probably down. There could be a vote, where players say, or even coaches say, we don't want this. You know what I mean? It's coaches are coaching for their job. Like if they don't get into postseason, it could be the difference between them coming back next year and them being unemployed. And so
you can also run into situations where you have a team who's kind of comfortably in the playoffs and knows their seed, and a team who's kind of fighting, on the edge to make it. And you have, a team kind of sits a lot of their guys.
The Eagles.
And it's just that extra game where, and a team I think would be more likely to rest those guys if there is the extra 17 game instead of it being the 16. So I think it'll be interesting if we run into scenarios early on. I think, like you said, it could force the NFL to really take a look and maybe backtrack. I think the first couple of years, though, I think will be really big in determining how everyone in the NFL kind of takes it.
It's funny. It's a two-sided coin for me. As a big football fan, I like it. It's another week of football. But then some of the things we talked about just now, Jordan, like I think it's going to mess some things up. It's going to mess the competitive balance. It's going to – until you mentioned it, I didn't even really think about that aspect, is if a team – plays a team that's resting its starters, gets an easy win, and the other team that's battling for that playoff spot doesn't have that luxury, and it costs them their spot. Like we saw that. It happens now in a 16-game schedule.
I think you add that extra.
It's more likely to even happen now more. And so I don't know. I think if I had to vote, I'd almost vote to knock off 2 preseason games and go to an 18-game schedule. At least it's the same, home and away, and maybe they can do something where you play the same 2 extra teams. All the teams do. And, I'm not a scheduler, so I don't know how the logistics, but I think there's a better way. We'll see how this all plays out. It's going to be definitely interesting to say the least. And I got a feeling we're going to be talking about this at the end of next year heavily. So let's stay in the NFL, Jordan. The 49ers made a trade. They now hold the 3rd pick in the NFL draft. I think there's no secret when you make a move like that, you're taking a quarterback. Which one? I think a lot of it depends who's on the board. I don't know if they have.
Well, that's what's weird is if you trade up to 3, you usually think you'd know who your guy is. You know what I mean? If you're giving up that much and moving up that far, you're really going to want to move up to where you know you're not going to have a team that can kind of steal them. So that's where it's tough, where if it is a guy like Justin Fields, the Jets are, it looks like, going to go with Wilson, but there's no, Fields could still be that guy. So if you're San Francisco and your Fields is your guy, and that's what it kind of feels like. And let's say the Jets kind of surprise people and take him, but you're kind of left with your hands open, where Zach Wilson might be a good quarterback and a good prospect, but that's not why you traded up to 3. And I think that's why I'm thinking it could be Mac Jones or someone outside of those 3, which I don't necessarily agree with. But to me, it just doesn't make sense to move up to 3 and still not be sure if you're locking in your guy, unless they know, you know what I mean? Unless there's kind of an inside thing where it's kind of a given that the Jets are going Wilson. It's just, to me, you have to know. So I got to think it's either Fields or a Jones.
To me, if it's Jones, I think you don't have to trade up to 3. I think you really overdraft him there. I'm not a big Mac Jones guy. Maybe that's why I'm saying that. Let's deep dive into this even a little bit more. What does it say? To me, what it says is San Fran's not sold on Jimmy G. I know they're saying all the right things in the press. You're still our guy. Even if we draft a quarterback, he'll be your understudy. You're not drafting a dude at 3 to stay behind Jimmy G for 3 years.
And even 3 years, Jimmy Garoppolo is really not that old. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo wants to hear about mentoring. He really hasn't been able to take that step and command a team himself outside of that Super Bowl year. So I think there's same with the Jets is just I wish for the quarterback's sake is to move on, kind of let them get a fresh start and kind of get a jump. And they're almost holding them hostage in a way, which I understand it's probably for draft day trades, but it's just kind of unfortunate to see. And I get it. It is the diplomatic thing to do, but to see a team say, Darnold's our guy and Garoppolo's our guy,
it's all
and there's not really truth behind
it. Sounds good, and we don't want to hurt his feelings. Come on, to me, you're insulting more of their intelligence. They're not stupid. They're not buying that. Jimmy G's not hearing that. Sam Darnold's not hearing that and saying, "Yeah, that's true." They're saying, "Man, my team don't have much love for me."
Yeah.
And you got to move them. I think Jimmy G actually gets moved. I think New England's still in love with him. And,
I think if that's the main player. I think that's really what the Niners saying they're not trading him is kind of about, is trying to get the Patriots to make that first move. And I think they're trying to see how interested the Patriots are going to be.
More coach speak. If you say, hey, we got to move him, the value goes down because you're saying we're up against the wall.
Especially with a guy like Belichick who is pretty savvy in situations like that. So I think the Niners are trying to play it safe. And the Darnold scenario, I don't really understand. I think they're on the edge of almost being like disrespectful. It just, they've continued to say he's their guy. We're doing our due diligence, but at this point, whether or not, he's your guy going into next season or the guys in the draft.
Well,
so,
the Jets,
it just doesn't seem really fair, to Darnold. I just, he's kind of been trapped in a bad situation there for so long already, and it's either there's a new coaching staff, either let him grow with them or let him go. I don't. This weird in between thing. It's just not really fair to him.
If you're him, I don't want to speak for him, but I'll pretend, right? If you're him, you probably do want to go somewhere else, right? It's obvious the Jets aren't in love with him. They're entertaining, whether they do it or not. They're still entertaining the thought of drafting a quarterback. They probably are going to draft a quarterback at 2. If I'm Sam Darnold, let me go somewhere else. It didn't work out here. You don't love me that much. I don't love you that much because you don't love me that much. Let's break up, right? Like a couple. Let's break up and try to do it as amicably as possible. And let's both get fresh starts. You with your new guy and me with my new team. And I think that's what the Niners do with Jimmy G. I think they might even, for all we know, there could be a verbal deal in place that's just going to be announced at the draft, and maybe even who knows? For all we know, maybe they've even told
Yeah.
Jimmy G, we've got a deal in place. You're headed back to New England, and for New England, it would kind of make sense because you got
big.
Cam, who did not play well, and you could probably they got Cam on the cheap, so they could actually roll almost with a two. Well, they could they could go either way, Jordan. You're right. They could cut Cam Newton, worst case scenario for Cam. Or they could even use this 2-quarterback deal where they bring kind of Cam in on some packages like Wildcats.
Which we've seen, they've tried doing in the past with, a guy like Tim Tebow. Obviously, Cam's a different level quarterback. It would just, if that was the case, it'd be interesting to see whether Cam would be willing to take kind of that role.
I think that ship is sailed. I don't think he's got that clout and cred to object over it anymore. His play has not been to that level where you can complain. So I think Jimmy G when he's back, who knows, that deal might already
I do too. I think even if it doesn't happen now, I think his first other shot at free agency, or I think down the line, I think he ends up back there regardless. I think if you're a Bills fan, I think you really wouldn't want to see Jimmy Garoppolo go back there. I think even Bills fans now should be a little bit not concerned about the division, but a little bit more worried going into this year. The Patriots aren't going to be that team. They're the biggest contender, and now they're at least trying. I think last year you heard the quotes from Belichick, and you saw the guys that were there. They really weren't going for it. And I think now seeing a guy like Belichick really gear up and do it kind of in his own way kind of can be scary in itself. And thinking to get a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, who was his guy and who he wanted to ship Brady off for, would be kind of a scary thing. And I think it definitely opens that division up a lot more. I think the Bills are a great team. It's just to do something like the Bills did and to have a guy like Josh Allen take that leap like he did and then maintain that level, it would be difficult to see, especially with a guy like Belichick on the other side. I still think the Bills win. I just think that Jimmy Garoppolo situation could really make that division a lot scarier than having Cam there.
He's good when he plays. The Jimmy Garoppolo's big problem is staying healthy. He can't put up, seems like, a full season together, which may be the reason why New England goes with a 2-quarterback.
But I think
system.
That's where you see New England's been probably the best team at keeping their quarterback healthy for the last kind of 20 years. So I think it's just they've done so well in that system. We've seen Garoppolo do well there. I just think it's still a perfect match. And I think Belichick, if he had his way, would still have Garoppolo. So I just think that's kind of down the line, regardless if it happens before the draft. I think he's going to be a Patriot eventually. And I think that's why Belichick has signed Cam Newton and isn't going out to draft a guy, because I think there's still part that he really wants to bring Garoppolo back and do what he wanted to do before.
Yeah, let's stay with this trade and talk about the other team that's involved in it with the Dolphins here. Now, there was talk that they're really not high on Tua anymore. They've kind of soured. They don't think he's the guy they thought he was when they drafted him. And then they trade out of the 3. Everyone had them maybe going with another quarterback. Now they trade out of the 3. They went to 12. And then people say, well, maybe they're like Tua. They're going to give him another year or 2. But then they go and they make another trade, and Miami's back up to 6. They traded back up. So they went from 3 to 6, which kind of keeps them in potential quarterback territory, where if they don't like Tua and they want to go in a different direction. I don't know what to make of this. Are they still have quarterback on their mind, or a lot of people have them taking what you call it, the wide receiver out of
Chase.
Chase at 6. So what do you think the mindset is here? They traded with the Niners, got the 12th pick, and then they made another deal to move back up to 6. So they got something to plan.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think they knew. I just don't. It's tough to judge Tua, and I don't know how they really are judging Tua off the limited time they used him and kind of the non-committal way they used him to base a player and kind of what you think he's going to be in the future off that, it's just really unfair to him. I think the bigger problem is really probably their scouting department. How do you last year put that pick into that guy with that much confidence, and a year later, and not even a year during the season, they weren't even sure if that was the right pick? I just think they should really get out of it now or commit. When you do this in between kind of prove it every year thing, some of the guys just don't work well in it, and I don't think it's necessarily their fault. I think it's just they need to be in a correct system and kind of be nurtured more than there's some guys that do work and they just throw them in, into the fire and they do succeed, and there's some guys that don't. And I think we've seen a guy like Tua, who even in college was benched for Jalen Hurts in the past. It could be a fragile situation, and I think we've seen with Darnold. With obviously Gase is really not a great coach to begin with, but I think that in between thing there has made it difficult for him as well. So I think some obviously falls on their play and what they're doing, but I think there's some, when you're in a shaky situation, when the floor under you shaking, it's hard to stay straight. And I think that there's so much blame that's falling on these guys that a lot of these organizations around them are kind of crumbling, and they just turn and throw it on him. And I just don't think it's fair, and I don't think you can ask these guys to be these franchise guys when the franchise itself really isn't all too stable. I think that's the big thing. Is I think even you see like Cleveland with Baker was shaky. He had the great rookie year, then was shaky. They have kind of a stable front office now. In this year, he was a good quarterback. He wasn't great, but he's still there's no questions, is Baker the guy next year? They know he's the guy. They're putting the team around him, and that's the way you should do it. If he doesn't succeed, then that's fine. At least they went out and did what they could to let him succeed. And I think with the Jets and even with the Dolphins, they really haven't done what they can do to make those guys the best players they can be. And I think it's unfair. I think some of it's shortcomings on the GM and the coach, and they're really taking the easy way out of, well, he's not what we thought he was. Well, he might have been had you done the right things around him. So I think some of it's a cop-out. It's the Brian Flores situation doesn't make sense because he was kind of the guy that came in for him. So it's odd because he was the first coach that drafted him. So you would think that's the guy you'd want to build around. The Jets, it's a little bit more understandable. It's a new coaching staff. Usually sometimes you want your own guy, especially at that pick. So that's more understandable. Just the Dolphins, it really doesn't make all too much sense.
Yeah, let's have a little fun here. Let's each make assuming the Dolphins stay in that number 6 spot, don't make another draft day deal or pre-draft deal. Let's each here say who they pick, even if it's not even a player, but even if we just say they're going to pick a receiver or a quarterback. Yeah. What do you think they do? I'll let you go first. I already know what I'm going to say.
I think they're probably going to do whatever the Bengals don't. So I think they go either Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase or whoever doesn't get picked right before him. I would find it hard for them to take the quarterback that falls to them. It would just be really difficult for them, to me, to justify that this is the guy we got, because there's no way at 5 that they're guaranteed to get the quarterback they want. So I think it's them it should be them doing what they can do for Tua.
Yeah. You must be reading my mind, because I was going to say, don't be shocked if they go O-line with Sewell, and I know they like Chase, the receiver. So it'll be interesting to see what they do if both of those players.
Yeah. And the other thing with Sewell is the guy that was kind of projected to go 2 or 3. So that could be a situation where the Dolphins see now he's going to be available right there. That's a talent that normally wouldn't be there. Yeah, we might as well get
extra draft picks in the process of dealing the spot. Yeah. Maybe you talked me into it. So I'm going to go either. I don't think they pick quarterback at 6. I think if they were picking quarterback, they would have kept their 3 spots. So I'm gonna watch us both be wrong here, but I'll be shocked now if they go quarterback, just with all the ramifications. You upset Tua, you make that pick.
Well, it looks
horrendous.
like it would be either Fields or Mac Jones. And it would just be really tough to see Mac Jones kind of step into there with both being Bama guys and the guy after Tua. It wouldn't be a good look. I think it'd be messy all around. So I think if you do, it has to be, Fields or someone not from Bama.
Yeah. I think it's going to be Sewell if he's on the board and Chase if Sewell's not.
Because the Bengals have the same decision right before them, really. It's Chase or Sewell.
Yeah.
So.
Let's talk about a sport we don't talk a lot about, the hockey. The Buffalo Sabres, not that far from us here in Syracuse, although neither one of us are Sabre fans. They've just played their 18th straight game without getting a win. I believe it's the longest it's 20-something years in the NHL. It's, when you think about hockey, I don't want to make it sound like it's a grueling sport, but just a bad puck bounce off the ice
there's a lot of luck involved.
You could get a cheap win. So the fact that they can do 18 straight games and not somehow come out with a win, even their last game against the Flyers here, they had a 3-0 lead and they blew it. And I think it was Rasmus Dahlin that said they panicked. They hadn't had a lead in so long, they didn't know what to do. This team's and they're going to have to rebuild it. Jack Eichel, who's their major star, they're going to have to trade him. They're going to have to really rebuild this. They fired their coach. They have an interim coach.
Which is sad because with Eichel, he was supposed to be the savior, and he's really a good player. And it's just to get the savior and then to be so bad after that you kind of got to move on too. It's just, I don't know, like you said, to make kind of a quote to talk about the panic issue, that it's really a leadership issue, apparently, from every level. If there's not one, no player seems to have stepped up, no coach has. I know, didn't they just fire their coach?
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Think about, who owns the Sabres, the same Pagula who owns the Bill. Yeah. Talk about a tale of two cities. You just had a team, get very close to the Super Bowl and have a great year, and the other team you own, one of the worst in sports right now. And so both ends of the spectrum for the Pagula family who own the Bills and the Sabres. And now when I was thinking about how the Sabres are playing, I thought about even other sports. Who would I compare this to? And I know you're obviously young, and some of these comparisons you may not even remember or know about. But I think about when I go to football, I think about the old original Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, and they went like 0-16 and was just follies. Like they were just a highlight film of comedy errors. And one of my favorite quotes is they asked the head coach, what was his name? John, I'm getting old. I can't remember the name, but they asked their coach, what do you think about the execution of your team today? And his answer was hilarious. He said, I'm all for it. With the reporter meaning the execution of how they played on the field, and he took it as a play on words, meaning to kill them all. And he's like, I'm all for it. And so a funny quote that goes down in history. I think of that team going winless. I think of don't remember what year it was exactly, but there was a Baltimore Orioles team that was just losing game after game. I think it was like up to 20-something. It was
baseball, I think, is probably your most comparable. I think football's tough because so much of it's talent. Yeah. I think with hockey and with baseball, the seasons are so long, and the way they play in the games and stretches is you're bound to get a hit here and there. You're bound to get a goal here and there. And to not do that, to not just have, a puck roll in when you need it for 18 straight games, it's got to be tough mentally just to not be able to get that one. It's got to be tough. And once, you get to this level, it's one of those things, as much as you don't want to think about it, you don't want to know the number, it's there, you haven't won in this long.
Listen, I'm not in that locker room. I'm not really following them day to day. It's probably a safe bet to say some of those guys would probably quit at this point. They're not going to admit it. But when you struggle that much, you're not going to make the playoffs. Hockey's a grueling sport.
But I think it's even different than having a tough season. Having a streak like this, it just, it's something that's there. You have to shake it. And to not, to just not get that bounce, it's got to be different. It's almost confusing, it's got to almost be mind-boggling to not just have something go your way.
Well, hopefully
like that.
for that city and those players that it comes to an end soon. But it's making me kind of watch the box score to see if tonight's the night, that it ends. So let's go to baseball. We brought up baseball. There's always injuries in baseball, Jordan, and in any sport, right? Eloy Jimenez is out for the year for the White Sox. They were, when we did our preview show, I believe we both picked them to win the division. I had them, making it very far.
I think I had them in the World Series.
Does this change anything? Your thought process on where the White Sox are going?
Not so much the division. I think it can shake up the playoffs a little bit, just not having that extra bat. And it's, not just an extra bat. He's a great hitter. But I think they're going to be okay. I think they have so much young talent, and guys are flexible there, being as young as they are. I think they'll be able to move guys around, and I think it'll work out. Is they almost have so many prospects, you'll be able to try out a couple guys that you normally wouldn't because of Jimenez being there. So I think it's unfortunate you'd rather have him, but I think there is, a little silver lining in it is you do get to see a couple guys who are good players. You're not, just bringing up nobodies and seeing what they can do on that level as well. So I think it can be a good, they can get something good out of it as well.
Yeah, not to downplay Jimenez. I think he was poised to have a really great year. But when you look at this lineup still, you got Jose Abreu, you got Luis Robert, you got Nick Madrigal, who's going to bat 300 and get on base and score runs.
You got Moncada's there.
Yeah,
Luis Robert,
Tim Anderson.
Yeah,
they're still pretty stacked in the offensive areas. So I don't think they're going to miss too much of a beat. I think this would be a bigger threat. And again, not to belittle Jimenez, who was a great player. This would be a bigger deal, like whether winning the division, if one of their pitchers went down. I think they can overcome. They're going to miss them for sure. I think that goes without saying. But I think they have enough firepower. They also kept Andrew Vaughn, made the team. Highly touted prospect, big basher, had a great spring. So this may open the door up for him to show he's the real deal. He might be the rookie of the year now or one of the favorites. So, because a lot of people weren't sure he was going to be up with the club yet. And so now I think he throws his name.
Well, that shows you how good the White Sox system is, that a guy getting injured, the next guy up is potentially the rookie of the year.
Yeah. So I don't think offensively they're going to drop off too much. And so I'm not going to change my evaluation on them. I'm not a White Sox fan, obviously. We're both Mets fans. But if, I don't believe in second favorite teams. I don't have a second favorite team. But if there was a team I had to watch besides the Mets just for exciting baseball, the White Sox would probably be at the top of my list. And they're going to be fun to watch. They got a little bit of everything, and for many years they were down near the basement, and so now they had some good drafting, good scouting. We talked about scouting being a big part of sports, and they've made the moves, and they might be able to get away with the loss of Jimenez.
And I think, like you said in there, is they're a very diverse team. They're not just home runs, they're not just speed, and I think that's what really helps alleviate that loss, is they don't rely on just one bat. They don't rely on just the home run. So you can kind of shift different guys in there to fill that role, where I think in a certain other team, if he's on a different team where they rely on the bigger hits to get guys in, it's a bigger loss. But I think, like you said, having kind of a diverse lineup, guys that are going to hit guys in and guys that are just going to get on base, and also having guys that are going to drive them in, it's just having a good mix is really good, especially when guys can go down. And that's going to happen when you play 162 games.
Yep. So we have a little time left. Let's talk about, I don't have the banner up for it, but it's something that's going on right now is pro days. We don't have a combine this year, and you have a real strong opinion
Yeah.
on pro days. It's like you say, it's guys in shorts thrown against
Yeah.
air, and everyone looks great in shorts against no defense. And your take is that people are just raving about going head over heels for these dudes. And of course, you should look like that. Almost, it's really how you should.
Yeah,
look.
I'm not anti-pro day. I think they're necessary. I think they're good, and I think coaches should still show up. But I think it's really just to make sure there's no egregious errors in footwork. There's no really, wonky releases. And I think you're seeing, even these kind of highly touted analysts, they're watching these quarterbacks. They're taking these giant, rollouts right, then dropping back another 12 yards left and throwing it 80 yards on the dot. And it is impressive. It is great. But we've seen all three top prospects do it. So those guys have the ability to do that. And I think you could take a lot of guys in college right now and have them run the same pro day. And some of them might even look better than guys that did it and are about to get drafted.
There's a lot of guys in the past that look good in the pro days that didn't pan out, right? Your Achilles Smiths, your Jamarcus Russells, RG3, even Robert Griffin. And so, I agree with you. I think you're supposed to look like that, and people just falling head over heels.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand.
I like game tape. I know I coach high school football, but there's something to be said about watching someone do it against real opponents, and when the chips are kind of stacked against you, where someone's trying to stop you from being successful, and yet you still are. I think I put more stock in that than it's kind of like baseball, right? You see a guy in batting practice jacking home run after home run, and then he gets in the game and he can't hit a curveball, right? And then the scouting report gets out, and that's all he sees. And if he doesn't learn, his career is going to be a very short one. Well, it's, with football, I want to see the guy do it. And I take more stock in watching real games.
Yeah. And this year, it seems more than most years that people are really moving the needle on quarterbacks based on what they're doing. And some of these throws are really impressive and they're flashy, but they're already so rare to see in an NFL game that, it would be spectacular to see, but it's not going to be used. You're going to have him drop back 3 to 5 yards. You're going to have him sit in shotgun and make reads. And I think that's the big thing, is you don't really get to see a guy make real reads in a game at a pro day. And that's so much of what the NFL is. And it's such a mind game. And that's the big difference. And I think you hear that a lot of guys say that, is the intelligence, the playbook, and the speed of the game. The difference really isn't, guys are bigger, faster, stronger, but guys going into the NFL, they're physically ready. The issue isn't physicality and can they throw the ball? Can they throw it hard enough? They can. We know they can. They were at those big time programs because we know they can. It's can they put those physical abilities and read a defense and make the right throws. And I just don't. There's so much. You see people saying, does Justin Fields, go tune out of the Jets because he had a good pro day? He would have had a good pro day as freshman, sophomore year even. Yeah. It's very odd to see kind of guys that are supposed to be draft experts, going nuts over watching a guy throw in shorts without shoulder pads with no corners. And I get it. It is
corners, no 300-pound defensive lineman on the edge who runs a 4.6 40 in that frame, right? Bearing down, throwing their guy or going around their guy and breathing down their neck. And so, you're right. And to me, I'm not saying, like you said, I think this is what you're saying. I think you look at pro day because if a guy struggles, I think you take more from a guy struggling at pro day against air than you got a guy performing well.
I think potentially, I think a lot of it is just to be there. You know what I mean? Just to be near the guy, to really get a feel for how big, how they really look, you know what I mean? How they sound, just kind of more than, seeing them on film, kind of more the real aspect of it. But I don't think you can sit there and see a guy complete, 29 out of 30 throws. It's kind of expected. These guys do so many reps, especially to get prepared for a pro day, and a pro day is even different than a combine. These are all conditioned to what they want to do. They pick the drills. So these throws they're making, they made hundreds of times
Yeah.
before.
And all these guys work with like quarterback trainers, wide receivers are working with wide receiver trainer. They're all kind of pre-programmed.
Yeah.
They know, like you said, that some of them are basically scheduling their itineraries. And I'm going to be the guy that looks at the game tape against, 11 other guys in football's case. And how'd you handle this?
Yeah.
How'd you handle that? What did you do? Did you have poise? Did you not have poise? Yeah. I'm going to put more stock in that. Sure, I'll go to a pro day. Sure, I'll watch it. And that I think you take more when a guy maybe struggles, because if he's struggling against air, what happens when there's 11 guys trying to get him?
I think it really depends. I think for me, the pro day would just be more of like where you see a flaw, where you see a kink in a guy's mechanic that it would be more difficult to see on film. It's tough to see these guys talk about, you know what I mean? Because he threw well, in shorts, he's a better franchise guy than this guy. You should really know going into the pro day who you think is better, and coming out of the pro day, unless he says some extremely egregious remarks or sounds terrible to you, they should probably be the same guy going out. It's crazy to see some of these analysts.
So here we go, Jordan. We got a comment from my friend Joe Light. He says, was Justin Herbert's success predictable from his game tape?
No, I think his measurables are, and I think his arm is. I think in college you saw it was really screen heavy. It was a lot more in the flats and short game heavy. But I think when he had to, he was able to go deep. And I think the thing that helped him is he was a 4-year guy there, and he grew with the program. So I think we saw him take a kind of a shaky Oregon program who offensively really didn't have an identity, and he kind of grew there. And I think seeing a guy kind of take a system and become that system, it's a lot more inviting for an NFL team to say, we've seen him kind of like a sponge take that in. He should be able to kind of adjust and take what we kind of have in for him. And he did great. And
I'll say this to Joe. It's a good question, and I appreciate it, and I like Joe. He had a great career at Oregon. I don't think anyone, no one predicted him to have the year he just had in the NFL rookie year. I mean, breaking rookie quarterback record. So no, I don't think anyone took that from a game tape. I don't think you could. I mean, he beat a lot of Dan Marino's rookie records, and really, really achieved based on what people predicted. But I don't. You look at his game tape, even in Oregon, no one thought he stunk. He was just being measured up against the Joe Burrows and the Tuas, and he was ranked. I think we all can say now wrongly, ranked number 3.
The difficult thing with that too is the year before us, Herbert was kind of the top guy going into the season. It was really him and Tua, and then Burrow kind of had the season he did. So the year before, if I think Herbert leaves, I think there's almost more of an expectation that year. And I think him coming back for a senior year with Burrow having the year he did and Tua still being the guy he was, almost dampened the expectations and kind of put people's guard down. So when he did kind of exceed, it was kind of a thing you would have predicted the year before when he had a little bit more hype around him. I think when people started seeing Burrow and Tua kind of light it up and really kind of run an air raid style offense, and then you look at Herbert's tape, which is good and looks good, but it's not as downfield oriented, and it is a little bit more screen based. I think it is easy to compare those two and be like, well, he doesn't do it as much downfield as those guys.
And that's more on the play calling than the quarterback, truthfully. And I think that's what people missed. Well,
I don't even necessarily know if it's bad play calling. It's just
not bad play calling.
It's the system.
It's their system they ran. I'm not saying the plays were bad. I'm just saying that their system was that shorter path. So we didn't know whether he could go over. I think he proved this year by his performance in the NFL that he can be a vertical downfield passer, and they're building a team around him, and they're beefing up that O-line to give him even more time. And I always, in my rankings, for the 2 cents it was worth, he was always my number 2 guy in the draft. I had him ahead of 2. I had a Burrow, Herbert, and Tua. And I'm still, I know Burrow got hurt. I still love Joe Burrow. I'm not even going to say when all is said and done. I think the injury. We're all curious to see how he comes back. Is that going to change? How is he going to play after a serious injury like that? But I'm not checking out on the theory that when all is said and done, Burrow still might be the best quarterback from this draft class.
I'm pretty sure I had Tua at 1, and I think it was Herbert or Burrow at 2. I liked Herbert a lot, but the thing with Tua, I just liked Tua's ability, similar to Herbert's, to do it for as long as he did it. It's just, I think Tua towards the end at Bama, getting benched in the championship game for Hurts and watching him, go out and win, as supportive as you are, it does something. There is something there. And I think now with the Dolphins, seeing that his rookie year, it can really hinder you. And I really hope for kind of his sake that the Dolphins do kind of go all in and make it this year his year.
But I read Joe's comment. That's funny. But people listening are like, I don't know what you're talking about. But while we got a little time left, Jordan, let's talk about this year's quarterback class. Obviously, you got Trevor Lawrence at the 1 pick. Jacksonville's going to take him. Urban Meyer is going to take him. I think we both have had this conversation, not in front of a camera. We both believe that he's the best quarterback in the class. So let's take him out of the equation. He's the number 1 pick and the number 1 rated quarterback. How do you rate these next guys? Your Fields, your Mac Jones, your Trey Lances.
It's pretty difficult. I like Trey Lance, but not as a pro-ready guy. He would have to be a guy that would be in a system. I think if you're looking at guys that are ready, I lean towards Fields because him and Zach Wilson to me are very similar players. But to me, Fields has always kind of been more highly touted and had a little bit more of the hype, and he's done it at a bigger stage to me. I think we've seen Zach Wilson be very good at BYU and take that big jump. But I think if you really look at Zach Wilson's film, he has almost 4 seconds on every drop back. And some of those throws that you see him unloading the ball for 70 yards, he's already reset in the pocket 3 times and taken 3 steps up. And it is impressive, and he is throwing good balls, but that's not going to happen at the next level. And BYU arguably has 3 linemen that are going to get drafted, maybe not necessarily early, but to have them at that kind of school, which is a smaller school, you're not playing those behemoth-type linemen, to have that much time at that level, I just don't trust it. I'm not saying he can't be. I just don't value what he did over what Fields did. And even coming out of high school, it was Lawrence and Fields. And I don't think Fields might be inconsistent a little bit here and there, but I don't think he's done that much to make you think he's not talented. He's got the size, he can run, and he has played well at Ohio State. Yeah, he's got a few duds here and there, but I would take that over one really big year out of Zach Wilson. I think I probably throw Wilson at 4. I think Trey Lance, it just depends. I think it's Fields or Lance or 2 and 3, depending if you want a guy instantly or you want a guy to kind of learn. I think Lance can be, I hate using the Pat Mahomes thing because I actually don't think he's Pat Mahomes-like. He's more of a runner. He's kind of his own prospect because he's got a similar arm like Wilson where he can just unload, but he runs almost like Cam Newton. He's bigger than most of the prospects in the quarterback class, and he's really a moldable guy. He's only played the 1 year. I think he had 48 touchdowns and no picks. So we've seen in the limited time he's played, he doesn't make mistakes, or he hasn't, and he can run like really no other quarterback in this class. I know Fields is a great runner, but Lance is 2 inches bigger and runs arguably about the same way. So I like Lance's development, and Trask and Jones to me are kind of in the same boat. They both are not high on both of them. I like Jones. I think that you watch Jones's tape, he really puts the ball where it has to be. His footwork's there. He really doesn't do anything wrong. It's just he's made big throws. It's just when you have that much talent, there is a little bit more space here and there because they can't double your main guy because your other guy in the other field or other side is equally as good. So I think he can be good, but I think if he's got to be in a better situation, I don't think he can step in and be that guy right away. And I think Trask, even being I'm kind of a Gators fan, watching Trask was exciting. I just don't. He's the guy that really scares me. I think they had so much explosive talent in Florida that he relied on so much of Pitts and Tony making big plays deep that you see some of these 70-yard touchdowns are 4-yard outs to Tony, and he's just running by 7 guys. And these big plays downfield, Kyle Pitts is jumping in between 2 guys. And I think Trask just doesn't jump out at me. I think he does everything well. I just don't think he does that with lesser talent, and he's not going to have that talent wherever he gets drafted, at least not, compared to how they were in college.
Yeah, we're not far off. Lawrence is 1. I think my 2, I'm going to sound like you here. I like Trey Lance if given time to mature and learn. And so I'll put him as my 2. I'm going to go with probably Fields 3. He scares me a little bit. He had some really bad games at Ohio State, a couple of them, and that makes me a little nervous, a little hesitant. So I'll put him as sort of 3 with a question mark. We can put Zach Wilson 3A, and then when it comes down to Mac Jones and Trask, I know you're a Gators kid or guy. I'm not a Kyle Trask guy, and so I'm going to put.
No,
I'm not a Mac Jones guy either. So, but I think he's a little more polished, so I'll put it Mac Jones, then Kyle Trask. 2 guys, believe it or not, that have kind of been linked to the Steelers, and I don't get excited.
I'd much rather have Mac Jones. I think I wouldn't mind Jones. Trask, I would be a little bit more weary because I think we have playmakers in Pittsburgh. You don't have
Trask
the level of playmakers.
Could be like Landry Jones 2.0 or Mason Rudolph 2.0. I don't think he's this franchise guy that you build around for 10 years. I think people are really reaching with him. I think, like you said, with the 2, Pitts and Tony, I think he had a lot of flaws. Like if I could be a quarterback and dump it off to them and look good in the box scoring. So I think we saw a little bit of that. So I'll put Jones and Trask as the kind of the caboose on the quarterback rankings. And when you compare this to even last year, it's so hard to do that with Burrow going down. But I don't think anyone's 7. Even Lawrence, I don't think they're going to have a Justin Herbert type season. So
I don't know if they have that type season, but I think Lawrence is your best quarterback prospect, and easily, since Luck at least to me. I just think there's, and I was one of those guys that early on he can't be as good as people make him, because even out of high school this is the guy. He's going to Clemson after Watson. He's going to be the guy, and it's one of those things. A guy with that much hype, it really can't be true. There's no way. And then you see what he does, and he has a great freshman year. And then he has a great sophomore year, and he really doesn't have a bad game. And that's what's almost scary is when you talk to people and it's like, well, he can't be that good. He can't, point to a game he didn't play well, and it's very difficult. There's really none. And if there is any, they're usually crucial games late in the year. Or not late in the year, but they're usually huge games against great teams. So it's just he really doesn't have any flaws. You watch his film, and just everything you say about the throws that, Trey Lance is making and Wilson are making, Lawrence is making the same ones, and he's doing it in a much more polished fashion. He's much more comfortable. There's really almost no knock on him, and that's kind of the scary thing is he's so good is you're almost scared to find out what is the flaw because nothing has really presented itself.
Yeah, I think he's when you look at a franchise quarterback, I think I don't know what kind of head coach Urban Meyer's going to be. However, I do think he's going to be good for Trevor Lawrence. And I think you're seeing receivers are already headed that way with the opportunity to play with a young quarterback like that.
Well, that's the thing.
I think he's going to make Jacksonville sort of a destination football team like they've never been.
They've done the right
before.
thing by, I think they signed Marvin Jones, and they've got DJ Chark, and they signed someone else.
Yeah, they did sign another receiver. So they're loading up in receivers. And I think even besides
James
receivers,
Robinson's there,
even defensive guys, I think Jacksonville is going to become sort of a destination football team because they're building something there. So I know a lot of people think Urban Meyer is going to flop. I don't think he's going to flop. What I would worry about is how long he actually stays there before he just says, okay, I'm good. See you guys later.
Yeah, I think the Urban Meyer kind of flopping thing, it's kind of an easy excuse to say, he's had all this great talent in college. Well, he turned around programs before he got those jobs. He is a great coach. He knows what he's doing.
He's been successful pretty much everywhere he's went.
I think it'll be like you said. I think they'll have to make that progress within the first 3-4 years before, he decides, to check out again. Because as much as I like Urban Meyer, being a Florida fan, he does, when he doesn't want to coach anymore.
It's almost like he gets bored. He's like,
I'm
good.
And I don't, I never want to say, someone's medical reason is an excuse or anything, but he has said he's retired for a medical reason and come back multiple times.
And now he's not coming back to college. He's coming back to the higher stress level, the NFL, right? So, I agree with you. So, all right, Jordan, we're up against the hour. Let's give out our socials. All right, you can follow us on Twitter at Newman_podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Hello Newman Sports Pod. You can follow us on Facebook. It's long. If you just search Newman Sports Podcast, you'll find us. Give us a follow on all those, social medias. Also, obviously, if you're listening to the show in podcast form, know that we are live Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern for about an hour. But if you don't catch us live, that's okay. We're on your favorite major podcast platform anytime you want to download any of the episodes. So Tuesdays, we're live, one show a week, and you can download us at any time. So whether you're watching us live, like Joe Light, I see you, or you're listening to us in podcast form, we thank you in either case, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Sign Lindor still.